It's a pleasure to be here. I noticed the other speakers all look fantastic and their hair is cut. How did they do that? Because I look like Albert Einstein, and here I am with no one
You
to
look
cut my
fine.
hair.
The content is what we're in for.
All right. Well, thank you. That doesn't make me feel any better. Listen, I want to challenge everybody for a moment. And I'm not trying to play armchair guru or meditator or anything, but at the pace that we live today and with the 24-hour news cycle, there's no question that it's noisy. Often we either have a 1 foot in yesterday or 1 foot in tomorrow, or maybe both, but often we just aren't in the moment. We're physically present and we aren't mentally present. And I know the presenters tonight have really prepared some really good information based on their experiences, the things that they've been through, their successes and their failures. And there's some real gold nuggets to be mined. They won't all apply to you, they won't all resonate with you, but you have to really be present to get the gold nuggets and to apply them to your life. So, really want to encourage you to be present and to really listen to what everybody has to say. There's an old saying that I'm a big believer in it, and that is that you're the same person a year from now, with the exceptions of the books you've read and the people you've met. And I would add one caveat. I would say the books you've read and digested. Most of us today just ingest, and we ingest a lot, but we digest very little. So in other words, you could read 32 books on how to be fit, and at the end of the 32nd book, if you haven't lost 1 pound or you're not running a mile, maybe you should have stopped at the first book and actually executed on something. And I don't mean that in a derogatory, condescending way, but the reality is there's information overload, and there's literally a paralyzing inertia with all the information we have today. So that's my kind of encouragement or advice for you to kind of try to come away tonight with a gold nugget that you could apply. I was thinking about what I could share this evening, and I'm just keeping my eye on my phone so I don't go over the 10 or 15 minutes. But I was thinking, what can I share that's practical that you can apply? And this wasn't planned, but I met with a few people today. And it's interesting. I think most of us would agree online tonight. One of the reasons we're involved in the Reite Club and we enjoy real estate is it is the path to true financial freedom, or certainly one of the paths to true financial freedom. In other words, residual income, passive income. True financial success comes from the ability to do what you want, go where you want, without having to actually earn income. I think the key is to earn income, cut a whole pile off the top and sock it away in places that it grows. And I think many people on the line tonight think that real estate's a good place for that. And I certainly would agree wholeheartedly with that. I have a gentleman been working with for a number of years. In the last couple of years, I got him into a fourplex. I think we paid about $452. That was just appraised for $800,000. And I got him into a condo a few years ago that he paid $758 for and is now worth approximately $1.3 million. But he told me today that he was planning on selling it. And I thought, that's interesting. Why are you selling it? Well, I've made $500,000 and I can take that money, I can go elsewhere. Well, where are you going to go? Well, I don't know. Well, you realize that you own a $1.3 million condo that has a 1,000 square foot rooftop patio that no one in town has. And then it's a new building and it hasn't peaked yet because many people are just discovering this area and discovering the building. And if you sell it, you have to pay a 4% commission, legal fees, and you have to pay something called capital gains taxes. See, when we started this journey, the key was to use other people's money to pay off an asset that was in your name over the long haul. That's how you build wealth. So you're telling me today, after 2 years of being on the journey, you want to jump out of the $1.3 million investment, get rid of it, shrink the investment to $500,000 of cash, which frankly is not a great asset to have, and then in one of the toughest markets to find value, go out shopping. Is that your strategy? I didn't quite say it that way. I think he still likes me. But the point is, we get really bored doing the right things. We always think we have to do stuff. Most people in real estate don't get rich fast. They get rich slow. And they get rich slow by putting a strategy in place and methodically sticking to the program. And avoiding the temptation to say, oh, I've made $500,000, I think I'll take it out, and not thinking it through to, okay, what are you going to take it out and do? What are you going to do with it? And generally what you're going to do with it is try to get back into what you probably just sold that just cost you a lot of money to sell. And one of the little editorial comments I'll make tonight is one of my few regrets in real estate over the last 35 and actually closing in on 40 years now, believe it or not. I know I don't look like I'm steamrolling towards my 60th birthday, but it's true. But one of the things that I regret in my real estate journey is the things that I've sold. And that brought me to a statistic that I thought was fascinating. The average net worth of most Canadians in 2019 was $329,000. Maybe that's because they want to get rich fast. Maybe that's because they won't stick with the program. Maybe that's because they're looking for the next new thing. Most of the stuff that we need to achieve what we want in our life has already been taught hundreds of years ago. And it's just a case of getting the information, digesting the information, and executing. The top 1% of Canadians, net worth $10 million. Top 2% net worth $2.5 million. I think that's sad. And I think it's a reflection that most people don't have the patience to stick in and do what they have to do to create true wealth. Because $1 million today is not $1 million of 50 years ago. To me, if you're a millionaire today, you have 10 million net worth. You're not a millionaire if you have $1 million. And I'm sorry if that hurts anybody, but the reality is the average house is $1 million. Somebody just told me about a cottage for sale around the corner from me last week that was listed for $659, sold for $959. Crazy, nuts, I don't understand, it's white hot, but the reality is $1 million is not a lot of money. So when you think about your journey, where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go, the question is, what do you want to achieve and why? And everybody talks about goals at this time of year, but you know what? Goals often I find with most people that I interact with, they're nice to haves, they're not really need to haves. And true goals, things you're really committed to and emotionally attached to, are things that you need to have, and you'll do whatever you have to do and pay the price and tolerate the pain to achieve that particular goal. That is a true goal. And something that often comes to mind is bacon and eggs. The chicken's involved, the pig is committed. The pig is committed. That's the commitment to the goal. All in. Failure is not an option. So when you look at goals, often we get these big lofty ideas, and what I'd suggest maybe you do this year in the key areas of your life is maybe make a little tiny changes that you can immediately implement that over time, incrementally, are going to make a huge difference. As an example, if we look at relationships, do you truly love the person in the mirror unconditionally? And this is an area of fear. I'm telling you, if you weigh yourself down, if you feel like a fraud, if you don't feel worthy, you are going to literally repel anything that you're trying to bring into your life that's positive because you don't feel worthy. You have to reconcile that relationship. Your inner circle. Is there somebody that you owe an apology to? Is there somebody you haven't talked to in a while? Is there a relationship where you have to say sorry even though you maybe don't think it's your fault so you can lower the anxiety? There's no awards in life for being right. Your spiritual journey, I'm not talking about a particular religion, I'm talking about meaning. It's one death per lifetime per individuals. What are you doing to make a difference, to make your neighborhood a better place, to help your neighbor, to help your friends, to help the world be a friendlier place? In other words, that universal law of reciprocity where you're giving and trying to make a contribution instead of just making withdrawals. Physically, are you maybe, forget about you want to lose 50 pounds, 30 pounds, 20, how about just take the stairs instead of the elevator? Walk to work if possible instead of taking the car. After dinner, do 5K or 3K walk with your friends or your family or your spouse instead of Netflix. Little changes, because then you can build upon them. If you go from not working out at all to I want to run a marathon, that's monumental. That's like going to mountain. You want to climb Mount Everest and you haven't hiked a hill yet. Make little tiny changes that you can build upon incrementally. And of course, finances, as I said a moment ago. If taxes go up, you don't have a choice. You have to pay them. Do the same thing with building your wealth. I have always committed myself to and made myself poor for things that go up in value. I've bought land, cottages, properties, apartment buildings that I couldn't necessarily afford and stretched myself pretending that my taxes went up 20%. One way or another, I have to figure it out. The entrepreneurial spirit has a way of reaching down and figuring things out and solving problems when failure isn't an option. And if you look at this properly, and it truly is a game, which is why I love Monopoly, the worst that's going to happen, the absolute worst that's going to happen is you have to bring in a partner or sell the property or take a little bit of a loss. That is not death. You can't play a game without losing sometimes. You can't play a game without maybe landing on somebody else's hotels and you have to pay a few bucks for rent. That's just part of the game. But if you play it properly, you play it for the long term, you persevere, you have a clear set of criteria, you ultimately will continue to build wealth over time. And it can tend to grow exponentially. The big thing I want to talk about with respect to these goals and your perspective is if you don't feel worthy of a $10 million net worth, a $50 million, a $1 million, if you feel like a fraud, you've got to deal with top down. You got to deal with the neighborhood between the ears first, because you will not execute. You will not get to where you want to go. Many of us, because of our upbringing, our schools, our universities, the company we keep, have a financial DNA setting that's set way too low. You have to think bigger. You have to reach bigger. You have to break through that psychological ceiling. Is it fear of failure? See, fear of failure, there's nothing wrong with having fear as a motivator. Replace fear of failure with fear of getting to 85 years old and looking back and realizing that you left all of your potential fully intact, that you didn't try, that you didn't go for it. I would have a bigger fear of that than of falling on my face or making a fool of myself or losing money on a deal. Again, I don't mean to be morbid, but if you live with a deathbed mentality, there's a perspective you bring to it where you're actually more fully alive, fully engaged, and less fearful. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, simply a game. All the stuff outside of business and outside of real estate is 10 times more important than transactions and money. As you've heard me say before at the Reite Club, I've never been to a funeral and seen a net worth statement propped up on a coffin. I want to end my little chat tonight with something that I think is brilliant, and I'm going to encourage you all to do it. Go home and watch the video on Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile in the 1950s. I think it was 1954. And why this is so critically important, it talks about what's holding most of us back, and that's the psychology, the neighborhood between the ears, the glass ceilings that we put on every single aspect of our lives. If we don't deal with that, nothing good is going to happen in our journey. You've got to break through that psychological barrier. For 1,000 years, scientists and doctors said it is humanly impossible to break the 4-minute barrier. No human can run a mile in less than 4 minutes. It will never, ever happen. They did laboratory tests, and Bannister, who was training to be a doctor, said, I can run it in 4:01, 4:02. It doesn't make any sense. I've got to be able to run it. And do you realize Bannister, those of you that know hockey, he wasn't on the AAA running team or the AA hockey team. He was actually only on the A team. He wasn't that great a runner. And when he was training, he spent a lot of time on the psychology more so than on the physical. And that's a fact when you look this up. But here's what I want to leave with you tonight. And I want you to think about this relative to your life, your barriers. Why haven't you done that first $1 million deal, $5 million deal? Why don't you have your first small apartment building? Why aren't you living the life that you want to live? Is there something there that you have to break through? Because here's what's interesting. Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, hadn't been done in 1,000 years, and within 3 years, more than 300 runners broke the 4-minute mile. You see, Bannister can do it. I can do it too. Now, thousands of runners have done it. So let's look at our little journey in real estate. No, it's not athletics, but it is. I look at business as sport. You've got all sorts of precedents around you. On the Reite Club tonight, some of the speakers, they have broken the 4-minute mile. They are there. They can show you the way. They can show you all of the tools and all of the resources and all the different ways that you can do it. And you just have to believe and break through whatever psychological barrier is holding you down. So if you'll take those little steps, have a real serious meeting with yourself, watch that video, and make little incremental changes now, tonight. Forget about even tomorrow. Even after the Reite Club tonight, if there's something you haven't done that you wanted to do and you keep making excuses, get out and do it. Whether it's a walk, making a plan, having a vision, feeding your mind with positive stuff, whatever it is, you have the ability right now to make 2021 the absolute best year of your life, in your personal journey as well as in your business journey. And I highly encourage you to spend the time feeding your mind, feeding your thoughts, controlling who you let into your inner circle and your headspace, because that's going to make all the difference in the world. I hope that helps, and I wish all of you great health, happiness, and a tremendous year.